We are going to begin speaking now briefly about one of the most difficult passages in the Bible to read. And this comes from the Old Testament, the first book of Samuel. And here we are dealing with King Saul. King Saul, who had a person to help him in the kingdom of Israel to do what he had to do, and his name was Samuel. Now, King Saul was not a very good king. He would do things that he shouldn't do, even though he was told what he should do. And he would do what others had done and ask God again for directions if he had made a mistake. Like he would ask God to speak to him directly, or to speak to him in a dream, or to speak to him through the Urim and Thummim, which were divination mediums that they used at the time. But none of those were answered. So in other words, God would not reply or speak to Saul, who wanted answers. So what did Saul do? He consulted a medium. Now, of course, as you might expect, a medium was someone who was not accepted as a advisor to anyone who was a leader in the Old Testament, or perhaps to anyone else. They were considered people who would be like saying you're using a tarot board or something like that, which they, of course, would not accept at all. Now, this passage where the king does go to this woman who is a medium, and the medium at Endor, Endor is where she is, and he asks her what he wants. And of course, she knows she's outlawed, so she doesn't want to answer him for fear of her own life, naturally. But he tells her that I am not going to do anything to hurt you. All I want is your advice through someone that I want to hear from. So she asks, who is it you want to hear from? Well, he wanted to hear from Samuel. But Samuel had been dead for 2 years. So how was she going to get the advice? And through her, how was he, Saul, going to get the advice through him? Well, the only way that could be done is if she somehow got him out from the realm of the dead, or hell, or Sheol, or as they called it in the Old Testament, Sheol, and got him up, and then he would be able to do what Saul wanted to give him advice. Now, as I said, this is one of the most controversial scripture parts in the Bible because it actually happens. Now, if it happened and this was a person who was actually what you would call a in a woman who was well, what they call, there are many ways to call her. And I mentioned what they call her, medium. A medium is probably the best word they use for this. If that happened then, and this did happen, and Saul did speak to Samuel, did speak to Saul, then if she was a medium, how could it be that the advice actually came to Saul through Samuel? And not only that, was that advice correct and true? And if that is so, then would it be a case where a medium, or someone that they thought was not anyone who could ask anybody for anything true, since the words were true, does it mean that those other than God himself can raise the dead in order to get information from them? See, that's why this is such a controversial part in the Bible, controversial sections of verse. Of course, there are more verses than that. I mean, actually, to get that whole thing, I believe one would have to start, let's say, now this is in chapter 28 of First Samuel, and probably, say maybe verse 4 through maybe verse 23, if we want to go all the way through it. But we won't go all the way through that. Now, I am using today, in order to enlighten us on this very interesting topic, 3 Bibles. I am using 3 Bibles, not only because they have 3 different points of view, or sometimes similar points of view, but also because each Bible has these notes that clarify things, as I've said before. So the first Bible I'm going to use today is the New International Version Quest Bible. And the reason it's said Quest Bible is because it's a question and answer Bible. Now, for example, if you happen to be looking for something in the Bible and you're reading it, what this will give you is not only the text, which you can see plainly right here, there is the text, but on the sides of the text, there will be questions answered. Questions answered all over the place. You can go through this whole Bible. But not only that do they answer questions, which is true, but they also will have articles giving further insight into that particular passage. Now, we're going to use that today. We're going to also use, as I showed you before, the Voice Bible, which also has the text, as you know. But in addition to that, it has these sections, which you see where my little finger is, where these are internal comments that clarify things. So I will be using that today also. And the third one I will use today shouldn't surprise you at all. This is the Finis Dake Annotated Reference Bible, where you have the text in the very center, as you know, and you have all these notes around the place, and that will also give us insight. So, using those 3 today, we will begin this section. And when you see it on YouTube, what we are going to use for it as a title, it is going to be called, let's see what we're going to call it. We're going to call it Medium, Medium. So when you see this video, it'll be called Medium. So we will come back now and begin with these 3 Bibles dealing with this extremely controversial and difficult passage.